So this week, as I was thinking about our ongoing monthly theme of needing kindness now more than ever, and the particular theme for this week being the importance of nurturing a kind heart, I happened to say to Emmett, my 6-year-old, what do you think I should tell people about the importance of having a kind heart? And he said, well, you could probably call my school. And I said, oh? And he said, well, you could ask Mrs. Montevecchi or Mrs. Dempsey for advice. And Mrs. Montevecchi is the principal at Hannah's school, and Mrs. Dempsey is his first grade teacher. And so I said, well, that sounds like a good idea. What kind of advice do you think they would give me? And he said, well, we talk a lot about having a kind heart at school. And I said, oh, well, what do they tell you? What's their advice? And he said, well, I don't remember. Which, in fairness, he didn't tell me to ask him. He did tell me to call Mrs. Montevecchi and Mrs. Dempsey, so he didn't make any claim to having that information. But I do know, and I just went and checked it out with the Hannah School students who are here in our classroom, that one of the things that Hannah does do every single morning is that they have the children together as they open their day at morning meeting, say a series of words. And these are the words. I just checked them out so I do them in the right order. But they have them say, be kind, be responsible, be the best you can be, the choice is yours. I think there's something really kind of wonderful about that, setting the tone for children. But setting the tone for ourselves is just as important. And that's one of the things that I've been thinking about, thinking how interesting it is that in the Proverbs that Beth read, this ancient book of wisdom literature, there was this real sense on the part of those who wrote, knew, and quoted these pieces of wisdom that having a kind heart does something good for us. In those scriptures that Beth read, one of the refrains that we hear over and over again, and Proverbs is wisdom literature. It's little tidbits. It's exactly what we think of as Proverbs now, short little sayings that give you good wisdom for life. And the common thread through those Proverbs that Beth read was that having a kind heart, keeping kindness as central to your being, is good for your body and your soul. That it tapped into this deep sense, this innate knowledge that when we do kind acts, when we guard our hearts from ill thoughts and hardened thinking and grudges and anger, when we guard ourselves from that, we do something good, not only for our world, but for ourselves. One of the Proverbs that Beth read said that from your heart flows all of your life. And of course, that's true. That's true in a biological sense. But what I think is the beauty of this wisdom literature is that it's getting at something even broader than that. That a kind heart does something good for us. Be kind. Be responsible. Be the best you can be. The choice is yours. Every day, every single one of us sets our feet to the path, and we have those exact same choices before us. Not just the students at Hannah's school, but every one of us. The choice to guard our hearts against grudges and hardened feelings and thinking. The choice to nurturing within ourselves a discipline of kindness. Now, I am not a doctor, but I do watch Grey's Anatomy a lot, which I think makes me at least this much qualified to give you medical advice. Maybe this much qualified. Because actually I've checked out stuff that happens on Grey's Anatomy with Cindy Shoup, and she tells me a lot of it is not true. But having a kind heart, doing good for the world, it actually does good things for us. It does good things for us spiritually and emotionally, but it does good things for us physically. And so the medical advice I'm here to give us all today is be kind. It's good for you. There you go. There's a proverb. Be kind, it's good for you. I loved the video that Beth showed to the children for Step Sitters because it really gets at the heart of what I've been thinking about for this sermon. That kindness can be practiced and learned and relearned, and that kindness is contagious. In that video, we saw how kindness spread itself throughout that community, those people who didn't necessarily know each other, but they were interacting. And that's exactly how kindness works. It goes from one person to the next, doing good for each one of us. Now, on your way in, I hope you got, but it was literally, that can stay there. It was literally a last minute, hot off the presses edition. So if you didn't get a little sheet like this, you can pick one up on your way out. But it just has some kindness health facts. So again, here's my medical advice for you. I apologize that it's very small font. It came this way. But it talks about kindness being teachable and kindness being contagious. And that's what I've been thinking about over the course of this week as I've thought about having a kind heart. Children, any of us when we were young, we're not born innately kind or unkind. We're sort of born as these open canvases. We can learn what we're taught, and that includes kindness. And it's never too late. It's never too late for us to learn more. You know, it talks on this sheet about kindness being almost like a discipline like weightlifting. You can build up your muscles for compassion. We can strengthen them every single day. Every single time we make a choice to be kind, we work that kindness muscle a little bit more. And kindness is contagious. Kindness spreads its way throughout each one of us, winding its way through communities and neighborhoods. Ultimately, it has the potential, as you saw in that video, to wind its way around this whole world. Now, that might seem pretty ambitious when we're thinking about our own life, our own corner of the world, and yet, I am a big proponent of the little drops of water fill a big bucket theory. And I think that's how kindness works. Your small acts of kindness are not done in isolation. They impact at least two people, you and the person who you're doing the kind act for. My guess is they impact many more than that. Anybody else who witnesses the kind act, or anybody who that other person goes on and does a kindness for. Your small acts of kindness are not done in isolation. They are connected. They are a thread that connects you all around this world, doing something good for you, doing something good for the world. Be kind. Be responsible, be the best you can be, because the choice is indeed yours. Now, I was researching about the ways that having a kind heart actually can do good for us. And one of the interesting studies that I came across when I was doing that was about not only kindness, but empathy. And the two sort of go together, but you can imagine how they're slightly different practices. Empathy is really that experience of stepping into another person's experience and trying to sit with what their emotion would be, and kindness may be the action that grows from that. But in this particular study that was done by Harvard researchers, they asked adolescents to talk about kindness and empathy. And they surveyed them on a number of topics. And one of the things that was very clear in that study was that young people said that they felt praised more often when they got the best grade, or did the best on the sports field, or achieved something at the highest level than when they did something that was kind. 85% of respondents to the survey said that they would rank achieving at a high level as being more important to their parents or teachers or mentors than being kind. I think that is absolutely true. I think about the way that our society lifts up achievement, pushes on the importance of being the best, getting the best grade, achieving at the highest level, making the most money, getting into the best college. The young people that we work with in our youth group here at the church are under stress like I have never seen in young people before, even 5 years ago in our youth group, even 10. I see Doris Ann and some other teachers in the room nodding. Doris Ann, would you say, does this match your experience of young people? The stress that's building up in our young people that is coming from the sense of being pushed not only pushes them to a brink, it also takes the importance of kindness and moves it way down the pole. And in the long run, what is that doing for them, and what is it doing for our society? Kindness is learned, and kindness can be practiced. And kindness is good for us. It's good for us as individuals, and it's good for us as a society. It's good for our children, and it's good for us. How many of us also feel pushed on those same stress points? We have to get everything done. We have to be at every meeting. We have to meet every deadline. We have to have everything finished at work to the best of our ability. We have to pay all the bills. We have to have the house cleaned. We have to do the laundry. There are a million things weighing upon us. And when our stress level goes up, it doesn't leave as much room or as much space for us to cultivate within ourselves that kind heart. The kind heart that the wisdom writers of Proverbs knew was so important for our well-being, for our society, for the way that we live and interact. The kindness of heart that Jesus came to teach about. Jesus' entire ministry here in our midst was about opening our hearts to one another, noticing what's going on around, and meeting those needs. Kindness is good for us. Bob Hope once was quoted as saying, "If you don't have charity in your heart, then you have the worst kind of heart trouble." And I think that gets at those two levels of kindness that I talked about. It's good for us, it makes us happier and is good for our emotional well-being. But kindness is actually good for our physical well-being. And scientists now are beginning to understand why. It's actually good for our whole selves, but it's good for our heart. Talking about cultivating a kind heart, of course, is talking on two levels, right? Our metaphorical heart, our soul, our sense of self, our core being. But kindness is actually also good for your actual heart, the organ that beats within your chest. And so what scientists are beginning to understand about acts of kindness, about the way that they impact us physically, is that they believe that there is a nerve in the body. Well, they know this. They know there's a nerve in our body called the vagus nerve, the vagus nerve. I checked this out with a medical professional, the pronunciation. The vagus nerve. It runs its way through our whole body. It connects to nerves that control and tune our ears to understand each other's speech. It connects to nerves that control our eyes and our facial expression, where we show a lot of our emotion. And it runs through our body, and it helps to control and to regulate the release of the hormone oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is sometimes called the love hormone or the bonding hormone, and it's because it creates these feelings of love and warmth and goodness in us that help us to be more connected to each other. But it also helps to open up our blood vessels so that actually more blood is flowing through our entire body. And it's considered a cardiac protective hormone. It's good for your heart. And so acts of kindness send a message that travels through this vagus nerve. It's received when you see kindness on the face of someone else. We hear it in someone's voice. We express it on our faces. When we do an act of kindness, all of those sensors in our body respond physically. And that intricate system of nerves controlled by this vagus nerve begin to respond physically as well, releasing oxytocin into your body, opening up your bloodstream, creating a sense of just feeling good, getting more oxygen-rich blood to your heart, helping your heart to be more healthy, releasing serotonin in your brain, which is a hormone that makes you feel happy. Sometimes people who do a lot of acts of kindness and who experience this feeling actually call it a helper's high. You feel so good after helping someone else because serotonin is released into your brain and it lifts you up. It's that vagus nerve that's connected to so much of our body that's operating here, that's touched by acts of kindness. And it's so interesting to me that without knowing that, without being able to tell you exactly that, those ancient wisdom writers of the book of Proverbs understood it, right? They didn't write down in the book of Proverbs, well, if you do something kind for someone else, it will be really beneficial to you because your vagus nerve will receive that information and then move oxytocin to your heart and protect it. But they told us something equally as important. They told us, guard your heart against unkindness. Guard your heart against evil because from your heart flows all the source of your life. They told us that a cheerful spirit and a kind heart is good medicine, and a downcast spirit dries up the bones. Those ancient wisdom writers, they were tapped into the way that kindness and nurturing a kind heart does something good for us, even if they were not attuned to all of the medical studies and the intricate look at the physiological side of kindness that we now have the benefit of seeing. So that brings us back to our kids and to ourselves. Because every day as we get up in the morning and set our feet to the path, we are faced with that choice. Be kind. Be responsible. Do the best that you can. And the choice is yours. We know that doing acts of kindness is physically good for us, but how do we cultivate an attitude of doing kindness in the world? When we feel busy and pushed and rushed, when we have to hit deadlines, achieve, make sure our kids get into the best colleges, make sure that they get to soccer practice on time, get everything done. How do we help them and help ourselves? I think it comes back to the fact that kindness is a muscle that we work. Compassion and acts of kindness is a practice. It's not a one-time event that we master on one day and we are forever good. But the more we do it, the easier it becomes. So scientists who have studied the stress level in kids have some recommendations for how parents can work with their children, but I actually think they are good recommendations for how each of us can take stock ourselves each day and can practice cultivating an attitude of having a kind heart. And they seem so simple, but really I think the key is making space in our busy lives and our busy day to check in with ourselves and to make this part of our practice. The more we make cultivating acts of kindness part of our practice, the more it becomes a habit, the more it becomes natural to us. And so the first thing is just to make caring central to your life. That sounds so easy. It sounds such a given in a church setting, right? It's what Jesus talked about. It's what God calls us to do. We're called to be caring people and to bring caring to the world. And yet, actually, intentionally, each day, centering ourselves on that reality that caring is going to be a central practice of our day can help us to cultivate this attitude of doing kind acts, can help us to cultivate and to nurture a kind heart. To remind ourselves that no matter how busy, no matter what comes our way, kindness is going to be the thing with which we lead. So to make caring and kindness a priority, and then to expand our circle of care. Now, this is one that is definitely true, people say, as you work with children, that children sort of naturally care about their closest circle, their family, the people who are closest to them. But we can help them expand their circle. And that's, again, a place where I think that actually is true for all of us. Each one of us as humans has a sense of feeling most connected to our closest circle, feeling protective of our closest circle and caring about our closest circle. But each day, checking in with ourselves, we can be mindful of expanding that circle of care. We talk about it here in so many ways. As we talk about working with Harbor Light Community Partners to provide housing for people that we may not know. As we talk about working with community partners all around our city to provide housing for the chronically homeless, to help them transition from living on the street to having a home. We may not know them, but it's a way of expanding our circle of care. When we talk about wanting to do what we can or send money or relief to help those who were impacted by hurricanes, in Puerto Rico or Florida or Texas, when we talk about the fires in California, even if we don't know people impacted, it's a way of expanding, reminding ourselves that our circle of care is so much bigger and broader than the immediate people before us. And when we can do that, make it an intentional part of our day and our practice, it becomes more of a habit to begin to realize that we care about each person that we see. As you walk down the street, as you commute on the train or the subway, that is a very challenging place to practice caring about every person. But it's a good place to do some homework on it. Just look every person in the eye and think how much you love them. They won't think it's weird at all. But that's the third piece, is actually practicing looking at people. We're so busy. We're looking at our phones. We're looking down. How often do we walk down the street and make eye contact with strangers? And yet when we do, studies show that if we look into another person's eyes, then we really connect and begin to care about them. It's again, physiological. But we have so many obstacles that we've put in our way. We trip ourselves up. I notice it in myself. I'm walking my dog and trying to answer emails at the same time. How many neighbors am I walking past with my dog on a leash and just with my head down? I couldn't even tell you because I didn't notice that they were there. Trying to be more mindful of expanding our circle of care and then directly interacting with people, whether we know them or not, opens up that natural kindness in our heart, and it does something good for us. And then the fourth thing is to seek mentors or teachers. Like any practice, there are people who have gotten really good at this, and there are those of us who are still working on it. Children benefit from having examples in making kindness a central part of their life, but so do adults. Each one of us can seek a mentor to remind us to put that into practice. Each one of us can be a mentor by living this way, being an example for somebody else. And the fifth thing is sort of the opposite, but it goes together, which is as we cultivate all of these practices of kindness, being able then to find a way to manage our less helpful feelings, what scientists call destructive feelings, our anger, our frustration, our road rage, our stress that goes up. Every one of us has these other emotions that are not the rosy, happy ones that we talked about. The kindness, the love, the altruism, the oxytocin flowing through your blood and wanting to make you reach out to the whole world. As human beings, we also have a fight or flight response, adrenaline that kicks in when we feel angry or we feel threatened. It causes us to stop operating out of our altruistic, big-hearted selves and to move into a more fight or flight posture, which also makes us operate out of the more reptilian part of our brain, which sounds a little creepy, but it's just a way of saying it's the part of our brain that's most primitive. It's the part of our brain that's most similar to all other animals. All living creatures have a fight or flight response. It keeps us alive. It's a good thing to have. It is not always a good thing for us to operate out of. As human beings, we can do what some other animals cannot. We can take a moment to move ourselves from that initial posture of wanting to run away or just really just throw down with the other person and move ourselves to a better and more helpful place. We can do that by pausing and taking deep breaths. Again, these things sound so simple, but I realize for myself how seldom I do them. And maybe for you too. Taking deep breaths, breathing in deeply through our mouths and exhaling as we count to 10 is a way of just calming ourselves down, reminding our body and our physiological self that we can move past this moment, that we can move ourselves back to a way of handling even disagreements with kindness. Making those tiny changes, making space for those things in our lives can help us to cultivate and to nurture a kind heart. It helps us to reduce our stress response, which is physiologically bad for our body, and helps us to elevate all of those good things that vagus nerve is doing in your body when you're cultivating an attitude of kindness. I want to close with a quote and a quick story. The quote is one from Mr. Rogers, and actually Lucy Keller gave me a book of Mr. Rogers' quotes because she knows how much I love him. In an act of kindness herself, gave me this wonderful book. But I felt like this quote is so instructive for where we find ourselves every single day as we try to move towards cultivating this attitude of kindness and knowing that what we need now more than ever in our world, in our nation, in our neighborhoods is more kindness. So Fred Rogers, beloved children's show producer and creator, he said this, and it's about love, but I think the two things go together. He said, love is not a perfect state of being. It's not a perfect state of automatically always loving the person in front of you. Instead, love is a verb, an action word, just like struggle. Love is a process. Love is constantly striving to accept the person in front of you just as they are at that moment, meeting people where they are, looking them in their eyes, connecting with them, realizing that their story may be unknown to you, but is real and powerful and potent, as real and powerful and potent as your own, and trying to bring those two things into connection. Here's the quick story that I want to close with. A friend sent it to me because she knew that I was thinking about kindness and kindness of heart. Now, she saw it circulating on the internet, so you may have seen it too, but it's about a photographer. And he tells his story of being a photographer in a downtown neighborhood in sort of a high-end photography studio. So he says, we were the kind of photography studio where our clients ranged from really high-end expensive modeling shoots to really high-end expensive family photography or really high-end wedding photography. But all of it was so highly sought after that we could charge a lot of money, and we booked appointments way in advance. And we never took walk-ins off the street. It was part of our policy. It was on our website. We were too important and too busy to take walk-in clients. And so he talks about being in his studio, his company's studio one day, 5 minutes before the doors were going to close for the day. Now, everybody, if you've been in any kind of a work environment, particularly if you've been in a customer-facing work environment or helping profession, you all know that feeling of being like 5 minutes from the end of your day, and then somebody walks in and you're already mentally checked out and you've locked the doors and cashed out the register, and then it's really hard to shift gears and be welcoming. And so he says that's where he found himself, that he was resentful of the woman who walked through the door. And she came in, and then he realized that she had a little girl with her, probably 5 or 6 years old, he said. And she said, I know that you're about to close, and I know that you don't really take walk-ins, but I had to stop by here because my daughter saw some of your photography, of children's photography, on her wall in the hospital room. And for the first time, he says, he looked past the mom and noticed that the little girl was wearing a hat, but didn't have any hair under her hat, and that she was really thin, and that she had a feeding tube through her nose. And he said in that moment, he realized that this mother had not come in to ruin his day, but maybe to save her own. And so he said that he listened to her as she began to explain that she knew his next appointment wasn't for 6 more months, but her daughter so loved the photography that had children dressed up in fancy dresses and with unicorns photoshopped in, and she really wanted a picture like that for herself. And the photographer said that he realized that the next appointment he had available, even though he didn't know the whole story, might have been too far out in the future for this little girl and this mom to know for sure that they would be able to be there. So as the mom was saying, I know you don't usually take walk-ins, he said that he got up from his desk and he felt his whole mood shift. And he said to the little girl, well, that's for regular customers. Sorry. But I've been waiting all day to photograph someone as lovely as you. And he spent 3 hours with that family, photographing the little girl in every costume, every princess dress that she chose from his repertoire. Now, he would refuse to take any money for the photo shoot. The mother tried to pay him. She insisted on trying to pay him. He would not take it. He sent her the pictures and then said, I didn't really hear anything else after that. Now, this story has a happy ending, sort of a happily ever after kind of ending. But the story could stop right there, and that would be the point, right? Don't worry, I'll tell you the ending. But his kindness, the shift in his whole self, when he was able to drop away his own stress, his own desire to meet a deadline, to get out of work and really connect with that mother and the daughter, was good for him as much as it was for them. That's the kind of kindness and kindness of heart that can be so hard to cultivate in those stressful moments of our life when we feel inconvenienced or put out. But when we do, it does something big for us and for our world. Here's the happy ending. The little girl got better. And she came back a few months later and she knocked on the window and said, I'm better now. And ultimately, then the mom tried to pay him again. He wouldn't take the money, so she took him out for dinner and they got married, and the daughter became his stepdaughter, happily ever after. But none of that was the point of the story. But now you don't have to wonder. Kindness can be cultivated. Be kind, be responsible, be the best that you can each day in your own corner of the world. The choice is indeed in each of our hands. May we go forth and practice cultivation of a kindness of heart. Amen.